And greetings, kings and queens. Happy Sunday, everyone, and welcome back to the Always the Queen the Metamorphosis platform. And as usual, we're here with another Sunday afternoon live broadcast. But clearly, I am not here alone today. I am surrounded by the elements as promised. I know that there are four. So before anybody comes for me in the comment section, let me let you know that one of our elements, water, is going to be a little late, but he is going to be here. He will be here. But I do have wind, earth, and fire with me here today. And we are going to be talking unhealthy mother-son relationships. I know a lot of you have been waiting with bated breath for us to have this conversation. So, one, if you're listening by yourself, I don't know why you're doing that. You need to share the live. That's the first thing. And also, I want you to make sure to put any comments and questions that you may have into the comment section. Do not let these elements escape here without asking them every single thing that you want to ask. Get it all out, queens. Get it all out. And kings too, because I know we're going to have some kings on here as well. Greetings, Monique and Saran. Welcome, queens, and thank you for being here as usual. So I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to let the elements introduce themselves. We will start with Wind. Take it away, sir.
Hey, everybody, I'm Wind.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Fire.
Hey, everybody, I'm Earth.
All right, let's jump right into it. We're not wasting any time today because this could drag on for a while because this is serious business that we are going to be unpacking here today. Unhealthy mother-son relationships. So I'm going to start with this whole mama's boy idea. I don't know who came up with it, but we all know what it is. And we know why somebody decided that they needed to come up with this terminology, because it is apparently describing a certain type of man. There is a typology out there that fits this description, apparently. And it's also apparent that queens need to be avoiding him. But why? What is going on with the mama's boy? Based on what I have heard, I understand that this is a man whose relationship with his mother has no boundaries. I also understand that this is a man whose mother might be making his decisions on his behalf. I understand that this is a man whose mom wants him by her side all the time. Would this apply to men who live with their mother late in life? I don't know. You can let me know. I also understand that this is a man whose mom might make him feel guilty for trying to have his own life or have his own wife. See what I did there? And he's therefore not able to do things like, I don't know, move across the country to take another job that's paying better because he's too far from his mother. Or marry a certain woman because she has established specific boundaries with regards to his relationship with his mother. And so I want to hear your take on this. So anybody, jump in. What's going on here?
Ooh, who's going to go first? Which one of you mama's boys is going first?
You.
Oh, man. I think, I went to go get the definition, okay, from Webster on what constitutes a mama's boy, right? And so what it says is a usually polite or timid boy or man who is extremely or excessively close to a solicitous relationship with his mother, or excessively close to and solicitous of his mother. So I don't think about timid, I don't think about polite in the definition as you gave your point of view of it, Queen. I think about it about a guy who prioritizes his mom over just about everything else, as you described it. And I could say personally, I was called a mama's boy growing up. Okay, I got that moniker. Yeah. People call me mama's boy until I got married. I got married at 21, and so when my wife took the place of my mom, I even caught backlash from my community, from my elders, for situating my wife above my mom. And my mom was devastated for a while because we were best friends growing up. She was a single parent. My dad left when I was 2, so we had a very close relationship. I made life decisions based on where mom was situated. I chose the college that I chose as a highly recruited athlete because of where mom was. I chose to stay home. I won't even get into even more salacious details with that whole decision, but I can say that I would have been somebody who was categorized in this basket of mama boydom. And I got cured of it as soon as I got married. And it wasn't easy because I was seen as a bad son by my community for cleaving to my wife, as the Bible says, you should leave your mother and cleave to your wife. I cleaved to my wife and was punished for it. I'll pause right there.
Yikes. Okay.
Set it off.
No, I would say, wow. I was thinking while you were speaking whether or not I was ever called a mama's boy. I know my mother and I, we've always been close, just like, I've been really close to my father. But, I remember when I got married, and you have the mother-son dance. My mother was like, we were talking and she said, "I now release you." That's what she said to me. She said, "You're no longer my responsibility in that way." Mm-hmm. And I was like, "Wow, okay." I didn't feel any kind of way about it, but I just remember her saying that. And I think it's, I don't see anything wrong with someone being a quote unquote mama's boy, because I think women are very vital in boys and men's lives. That's just my opinion. Because there have been many instances where I've had to call my mom about something. Water, what's up? You here?
What's up, guys?
Finally, some water.
Finally.
So, there have been many instances where I've had to lean on my mother for advice about certain things, that I knew that, this is not a good situation for my dad to handle. So I'll go to my mom about this. And, we had a very close relationship. And so I think that I don't see anything wrong with a guy being close to his mother, up until he's married. And that relationship, they can still remain close as long as, like my mother said, she released me. But it didn't release my closeness to her. It released her responsibility to me, if that makes sense. Or responsibility she felt she had to me. And that's what it did. I mean, we still remain, close. Nothing really altered in our relationship, except she just didn't feel responsible for making sure I ate every night. She didn't call me and be like, "Yeah, what you eat? You ate something? You been doing this? You doing that?" "Yes, Mom. Yes." She stopped all that stopped because that no longer became her responsibility. Right. So that's my take on Mama's Boy.
So I want to say that, in the title it says mother son, right? And so I just want to say that the parents set the tone of the relationship from the very start. And so the unfortunate thing is that there's no encyclopedia set, there's no Bible to parenting. So whatever we say today, is simply a discussion, a conversation about how we can actually bring some type of consciousness and health to relationships as it pertains to parenting. Specifically for me, we do have a lot of mama's boys, right? That's for certain. And the reason for that, and to be honest with you, is it most likely occurs when there's single motherhood, right?
You think so?
Well, I'm just making an assertion. I don't know. From my vantage point, that's what I have seen. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm not making any definitive statement. That's just what I've noticed.
I think you might have a point.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is. I don't know that there are any statistics,
Mm-hmm.
scientific research, or anything on which to base this assertion.
Yes.
But I do think that it's a very logical assertion to make, just based on the argument that Fio was making earlier. That to a large extent, he felt like he had to be nearby to take care of his mother because his father was not there. So a logical assertion to make that it may be more common in a situation where you have a son who was raised by a single mother, because to some extent his responsibility to his mother increases significantly if there is no other man around to do the things that the father would have done. So that it makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think that most of the archetypes that we discussed tonight, are going to be a function of that imbalance. Whenever you have a lack of health, you call it unhealthy. It's a function of that imbalance in the family structure where there's simply a single mother and no presence or very little presence of a father or father figure in the family.
Right. Well, Water, what do you think of the mama's boy?
So in what context? I'm kind of coming into the conversation. I want to make sure I don't just, go in the left field. What context are we talking about when it comes to the mama's boy?
Well, we've basically been discussing what characterizes him. Like, what does he look like? How do we identify him? And also what typically causes him to turn into that?
We want to know your experience as a mama's boy.
Well, I don't have any experience as a mother. So can't help with that one, Wind. But I do have a concept of mama's boys. And so now, Queen, is your audience mainly women? Because I want to make sure I'm speaking to them instead of speaking to if just guys or.
Yes. We are predominantly women over here.
Okay. So just from what I think as a guy about mama's boys is I think of someone who is gosh, I don't know how to say this in a conscious way, but I think of a weak guy who allows himself to be dictated by his mother. And let me just say this as well. On the flip side, if some guy was dictated by his father, that wouldn't be a healthy relationship either. So I'm not sitting here saying just because he subserves to a woman, there's some sort of problem because it's his mother. Because if he's basically being dictated by either parent, then to me, that's not a healthy relationship. So my experience with mama's boys, I personally am not a mama's boy. I'm actually out of my element. I was traveling. The reason I'm late is because I'm actually in my mother's home, so I can say that. And my mother is within earshot, so she's not like these guys are probably just they're just saying it, and they're gonna get text messages right now. My mom's actually within earshot, and I'm really thankful that I'm not a mama's boy because she didn't keep me on a short leash. She really taught me how to she gave me a model for women, what I value. As I got older, I started realizing that I value women who are similar to my mother. So here I am traveling on the road. Let me just bring this into real context. I'm traveling on the road. I'm telling my mom, hey, I'm late. I'm late for this podcast thing we have to do. And I'm like, hey, do you have a ring light? Because all I have is my laptop. She basically sets up the light, has the table set up, has this bottle of water for me. And she's like, oh yeah, I had a bottle of water because I thought you might be thirsty. Like, so for me, that's what I have seen modeled in my life. And so I value women like that. And maybe mama's boys, I'm trying to think of the guys that I know who are, maybe I would say that probably gets in the way of their relationships with the women that they have. That would be my opinion, because you have to think that if mom's dictating to you, as a matter of fact, I do know one now that I'm thinking about it, and his mom is pretty helicopterish around his being, and I've seen that come out with the women that he's actually been with, where they've just been like, what's up with your mom? And then he's like, wait, why are you talking about mom? And then it turns into that thing and turns into a defensive mechanism or whatever. So that's what my experience has been from, and not directly being a mama's boy, but having friends who are mama's boys and witnessing.
Let's just make that clear. It's a friend that we're talking about here.
Hey, you know what? Right? These three guys can't do it. I can bring mom and sit her right here. I can sit her right here and have that conversation.
And she would be the first to say that you're mama's boy.
Right, but thank you so much for sharing that. And you bring up an interesting point that I want to kind of pull out a little bit more. You mentioned how it interferes with romantic relationships.
Yeah. I would say that if your audience are females and they're either going to date someone who's a mama's boy, or they might be creating a mama's boy, let me just say that and maybe these guys can speak more. I don't know if any of them said that they're mama's boys. I'm not like Wynn. I'm not going to sit there and try to point the finger at somebody and say, whether they're mama's boy or not, because I'm just not going to. I'm going to let everyone, out themselves. But I would say, yeah, like I've seen my friends who have had that. And because you have to think about it like this. So if a person is a mama's boy, then mom has certain ways that things need to go. And we already know, if you're in a relationship with a woman, she running the show. Mom ain't running the show. Like, get out of here. And so then that starts to turn into a conflict because, the guy is kind of stuck in between those two. At least that's been what I've seen. I don't know what you got. You guys seen something different?
Well, one of the other things that a lot of people are not necessarily conscious of is that because you have your mom on such a high pedestal, and because she, cooked for you and cleaned for you and did so many great things for you, the women right now don't necessarily compare to your mother. And so you can't effectively attach to somebody that's not like your mom. So it does have an adverse impact on your relationships in that sense. And a lot of people aren't cognizant of that.
Ooh, man, that just opened up a whole can there, brother.
Ouch.
Yeah, I mean, so my message to women who identify or recognize that they're dealing with a mama's boy, my challenge to you is that you take this position. You can't fix that man. You can't fix that man, nor can you romanticize the man that you want with the man that is courting you. Like, you got to deal with reality. But the challenge that I want to pose to you is this: to not attach yourself to an outcome of like being with this person or changing this person, but attach yourself, if you were to attach yourself to anything, to making a difference with this person. This person may not be the man of your dreams. He may not end up being your Barack Obama. Maybe that you are the friend or the candidate that holds the mirror up for him to see that he is in fact a mama's boy, and his way of being could potentially mitigate him from experiencing intimacy, love to a depth that surpasses what he can get from his mama, because he's cleaving on to something that he's not even aware that he's doing it. So in short, be the awareness. If you're not going to be his wife, at least be the awareness, instead of cutting the brother off and saying, he got mama issues, and then let that man bobble and bounce along to the next sister, and who's got to experience and undergo the same things that you've seen or underwent. So just take it. It's bigger than me approach. and maybe I was sent to help this brother or to uncover something that could have been in his blind spot.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
I would just like to say, I would like to say to the queens, this is just a gentle reminder: you are not going to marry every man that you date. You will only marry one of them. And so that makes it okay for a relationship to not work out. Like, there is no shame in not having a relationship last forever, because they won't all last forever. You will eventually marry, but it will only be one. And so there is that. And so I like to encourage people to be open to failure in relationships. Don't beat yourself up. Don't think it's the end of the world. Of course, it's going to hurt. Go through it, sit in the pain, figure out what went wrong, why that was not for you, but do move on, because there are more fish in the sea. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that sometimes a person's purpose in your life is to prepare you for the next person, not to stay with you forever. Every human who flows into your experience on this journey that we call life is not going to become a permanent fixture in your life. There are some who will, but there are some who will just be temporary passers-by who come in literally just to teach you a lesson that you needed, and then they move on. And sometimes, and I've met a lot of women like this, there may be some men, but I've met women who have insisted on holding on to temporary people. They want to do permanent things with temporary people because they refuse to accept that this person's season in their life is over. It's done. Sometimes the person is trying to leave them and they are holding on for dear life and doing permanent things with the thought that doing permanent things with this person will turn them into a permanent person. You know what I mean? So they intentionally get pregnant, for example. We're going to have a baby. That's permanent. That means you can't go anywhere. He will still leave you, sis. He will still leave you. So that's what I mean. And that's just one example of permanent things that we often do with people who are clearly temporary, instead of just letting them go. Just let it go, you know? So that's just what I wanted to throw in.
I like that, Queen. Queen, do you mind if I add to it? Because you're saying something great, which is kind of, giving your audience a perspective on dating. And I would like to, because that's very insightful. And I think that, to add to this mama's boy thing, if I could say one thing to all of the women out here watching, is to also, you don't need to look for whether this man is a mama's boy or not. It will be plainly clear to you whoever you deal with. It's pretty obvious and pretty evident if they're a mama's boy or not. And that's different than having a good relationship, a healthy relationship with your mother. And I think that when you're talking in the dating world, Queen, giving your audience some sort of dating advice, I would say that sometimes someone may hear this and be like, oh my God, this guy that I'm dating, I need to, he's done this and this, maybe he's a mama's boy, where you don't really have to like think about it, because it becomes really evident that you're like, whoa, his mom is too involved in things in his life or whatever. And now that's getting in the way of our relationship. I think that it's great to kind of flip that back onto the dating perspective, because that's probably what, some of your audience is doing, is they're looking, how can I apply this to my dating life and find that permanent person you were talking about, instead of one of these temporary people who, hey, if he's a mama's boy, he might work as a temporary person, because you guys are in that time frame, you're aligned. But from a permanent perspective, I think that it would be really difficult to make a mama's boy a permanent partner, just from a standpoint of that there would be this barrier in between mainly his mother.
Yeah.
With very few exceptions, some cultures and some women are trained to be behind their spouse's mother. Like if you were raised in a culture where the women take a step back behind mom, then that's all you know. But for anybody else who's remotely Western, you're not going to change. You're not. That relationship doesn't get better, sis. It doesn't. He's not going to. You're going to make this man choose between his mother and his wife. My wife would never position the dynamics of our relationship in that way. Even at 20, when she said yes to me, she would not position. She would not make me or pin herself against my mom. No way.
Yeah.
All right, so
that is not a thing though. Like me competing with your mother. That's not a thing. What is that?
It happens far too often.
Oh yeah. Happens a lot.
It's far too often.
I cannot. No.
You
I
got
can compete with somebody who could offer you what I could offer you, but not with your mother. You can't get from your mom what I can. It's not a thing. Wait, shouldn't be.
Shouldn't be.
Man, I just saw a TikTok the other day. This mother, it was from the Bronx, and the son was in the front seat, and the mother got in the front seat, and the girlfriend just went bananas on the mother. She was like, "Man, you're not gonna tell your mother to get out the front seat? I'm your girl. I'm your lady. Your mother should be sitting in the front and in the back seat." And it was horrible. So yeah, you want to avoid that at all costs. Anytime you have like friction with the mother and the girlfriend, and he's allocating resources or doing things behind your back that you're not, it's a horrible situation.
It was also the girl's car. So the girl was the lady was going off. It was her car that.
That's horrible. I didn't know that.
Her boyfriend had her car. Her boyfriend, not her husband, had her car, and it had his mom in the front seat. So she went. That's another dynamic that'll take us down another rabbit hole. But in the age of independent women, I don't need a man for this, that, and the third. I got my own house, my own car, own crib, own job. And then the guy taking her assets, and a man who doesn't have his own, and isn't financially stable, in my opinion, should not be pursuing life partnership. He should be pursuing his highest self, the expression of his highest self, and him generating the type of lifestyle financially to provide for said family. I'm old school in my thinking, but I think those dynamics that really impact the power shift that help make the rift between our men and our women even more difficult to reconcile.
And the mother was utterly disrespectful. Like she was gloating about the whole situation. Like if you have a situation where the mother is just undercutting, that's just that run.
We say all these things, and it's really, really great points that everyone's making. But the one thing that we're missing, and this is the thing that makes this behavior so pervasive, is a lack of tradition. And when you have a lack of tradition, you have a lack of culture, because culture comes out of tradition. No one knows their place. There's a place that a mother has, a place the father has, a place the son, a place the wife, a place the husband, the daughter, whomever. Everyone has a place. Everyone has a role. And we've diminished those lines. We diminish those roles so much until the lines are blurred. You can't sometimes tell, is this the mama, is this girlfriend, or is this the daddy, is this the daughter? It's difficult to tell. And so we can talk about this all night long, but if you don't have a foundation in place, which is tradition, it's not culture is not your foundation, tradition is at your foundation. And then the culture is born out of tradition. then we'll always have this conversation, period. Because the quote unquote wife or girl, whatever, they are supposed to be as a daughter to the parents of her man. That's how it's, and they're supposed to treat her as such, period. Not as competition or as whatever else. And when you have that type of structure in place and everyone knows their role, there's no such thing as a mama's boy at that point, because the mother actually knows her role, the son knows her role, and it's the mother's responsibility. All right, I'm going to release you to your wife or whatever that is. And her actions should be in direct correlation to her words, period. So that's for me, and based upon my personal experience and going and sitting in various cultures and really not being there as like a visitor, but really immersing myself in that, to look underneath to see what is driving these relationships, what's driving these marriages, what's driving these families in a structure like you wouldn't believe that's in place, that everyone adheres to, because you're born into that. That's something you're born into. So it's like a knowing you have from that out of that culture. So yeah, I just wanted to add that, because we can, a lot of these things can be eliminated if we truly. I know people argue back and forth whether or not we have culture. I say it's a lack of tradition, which breeds culture. Period.
I think that's a very, very, very astute observation of the conversation as it's been going around, because you're 1000% getting us back on track, Earth, per usual. But it begs another question. If tradition is the crux, then why is tradition broken? What has broken tradition? Because the root cause, the corrective action to that is what we can do about it. How does fire, as Gary said, my whole government out here on this show, how does fire restore tradition as a practicing husband and father? Because I didn't come out of it. I didn't come out of it. So I came out of like, make it work. This is what it is. Turnkey, latchkey kid. Dad left it too. Like, so we're already outside of tradition. I didn't have it. I didn't see it. I didn't experience it, but I'm responsible for creating it because I'm a husband and a father.
Right. That's easy. So whenever you live in any society where you have this hierarchy, you're not at the top of the hierarchy. Whoever's at the top is actually dictating the terms of engagement for the society across the board. Your innate desire is to be close to, if not at the top of the hierarchy, somewhere there, and that's dictating that's dictating the terms to you, and you will automatically begin to adhere to those terms. You will. That's just being human. Nobody wants to be at the bottom. So then the things that are at the top will begin to mold your view of relationships, your mold of your view of life, how you navigate through life. And that becomes your standard. Instead of holding on to a standard that you had before you had remote access to whatever that is at the pinnacle, whatever that is that's making all the rules and decisions. When you don't have access to that, your ceiling, you're actually creating that. Mm-hmm. And so you will actually stay in this place, this bubble, and that's where you'll live, and you'll have all these standards, these traditions, this culture. You have this is very rich, but the moment someone bursts the bubble, then people can spread and just do whatever they want to do, so they think, and then you see this thing at the hierarchy, the standard up there, and you actually strive for this standard. And I always say, why are we fighting to be equal? Let me see. I want to put this in a way people can get. Why are we fighting to be equal to something we can never be equal to because it's not in our nature to be equal to that. We have a whole nother level of equality that exists. And we're fighting to be equal to something. We can never be equal to that. Because we would never go out and commit genocide across the world. So you can't be equal to that. Period. But anyway, that's a whole nother conversation. I don't want to go up down that road. But
I was just about to say, ouch.
So effectively, are you saying that we have assimilated?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So I should have warned you to Queen. Whenever you talk to the elements, the show might go off the rails.
But we'll bring it back. We go out and then we come back.
Right.
Yeah.
We land the plane beautifully.
I was waiting for you to say that, Wind. I was waiting for you to say that. Takeoff might not be the greatest, but we managed to land well. All right, I want to pause just a moment and take a look at the chat section and greet some of the queens over here. I see Jamina and Negli and Sandra and Saran, Iris Sister and Serene. Welcome here, queens. And I want to highlight a comment from Queen Serene, who also happens to be a psychotherapist like myself. So I know that she's probably analyzing every word that's falling out of your mouths right now. And she says, that's right, Earth. There is no such thing as equal in a relationship. There are accepted roles. Any thoughts on that? How do you feel about that? There is no such thing as equal.
It's impossible to be equal to someone. You can only be who you are. That's it. You cannot be equal to someone. You can only be who you are, and that's it. You can only be whatever your nature is. You can be that to the highest level, but like me saying, "Oh, I want to be equal to water," it won't happen. Water has a set of skills that he was born with that I don't have, and vice versa. And my quest to be equal to water would just have me spinning my wheels for the rest of my life.
Yes, it'd be tough to get there, bro. I would salute you. I would salute you if you could get there.
I feel like water just took that one in a direction.
Hey, he threw me an alley-oop. I had to take that one. I had to take that one. And I agree with what he's saying. And to add to what you're saying, Earth, and I'll let you get back to your point. Equal is a relative term. It's going to be different to every single person on this planet. Keep going, bro.
Yeah, that's very true. Equal, it was very, 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 very different for everybody, you know. But no, that was basically my point. We're striving for. We always strive for this pie in the sky kind of thing that we'll never reach at all. And the best thing for us to do is just to be who we are. Mm. That's the best thing for us to do, period. And especially like in relationships, just be who you are. It's not going to be like equality in a relationship. This is going to be you and the person you're in a relationship with. Show me equality. I promise you could not literally show me equality, because it does not exist at all. Doesn't.
Right.
It doesn't exist. I'll show you two people in a relationship. I can show you that. I can show you this behavior, that behavior. I can show you that. But couldn't show me equality. But anyway, that's my point.
I think contextually, when people talk about equality in relationships or amongst genders, they're talking about treatment. They're talking about treatment. They're talking about humanity. You got to remember where feminism came out of a state where like dudes was literally beating their women up, raping their women, okay, and getting away with it because they were the husband. Right, like women couldn't vote that not too long ago, and so when women talk about equality, what I hear is from a human perspective. I'm not talking about roles and responsibilities, because my wife just called me and asked me to come get the groceries. right? Like she's not carrying those groceries. I'm the man. Like even she has it that I should come get these groceries. You know what I mean? And so I want to just contextually bring some mindfulness to what equality actually means, because Earth is right. It's like we can't even compare man to man, dude to dude. I can size up another 6 foot, 200 and X odd pound dude, but we're not the same. There's no carbon copy. So we're not talking about equality. I think to keep it contextually relevant, we're talking about in terms of fairness and treatment and respect, things of that nature. Not like, okay, you know, everything is equal. It's 50-50. I'm going to pay half everything. You pay half everything. You carry half the heavy stuff. I'm going to carry half the heavy stuff. No, everybody understand that there's roles and responsibilities, and there's things that I'm better at than my wife. And it's not categorical or universal. Some people may say that, you know, women's roles or jobs are in the kitchen and they should be doing all the cooking, when there's some dudes are certified chefs and he's the better cook between the two. So what? Should the babies eat what the wife cooks, even though the dad's a better cook? That's where you start looking at what works for you with respect to your personal and specific unique situation with regards to the two players that are in a partnership. You know, it's definitely individualized. It's not universal or categorical. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, and it changes, right? So what looks equal to Fire when he and his wife are married at 20 looks different than what it looks like when they're married at 40. So I think that's why I was saying that it's relative. I could say that I want an equal partnership, and then the woman that I'm with, she's like, yes, that sounds perfect. However, we're looking at two different things. You know, she's looking at apples, I'm looking at steaks. And so we really have to realize that. I completely agree with there's no equals in a relationship. There's just accepted roles, because you will have to either fit into a role in the relationship, or three things. You can either fit into a role, not fit into a role, or be in a dysfunctional relationship where the roles are just jacked up and, you know, it doesn't work. So I think that that word equality is something that's kicked around, and it's not necessarily used in the sense of, hey, I know that I'm saying that I want to have a partnership where things are equal. However, I understand that it's relative, and I need to hash that out with my partner. I'd like to add that.
I would like to jump in and say that with regards to a point that was made earlier about culture, I just want to connect this discussion to that and say that cultures can be created. That is why we have subcultures within larger cultures, because even within my family, there are various cultures depending on which household you go to. There is a culture in my house that may not exist in my mother's house, for example. There is also a culture in my husband's house that may not exist here. We create the culture in here. We decide what traditions exist here and what culture will be born out of that. And that is how we will raise our children. So they will be raised within this subculture, which exists in a larger culture, which may look very different. But human beings are so flexible, especially young human beings. Children just switch in the same way they can switch languages depending on who they're talking to. They can switch their behaviors, their posture, even their facial expressions, depending on the culture that they are navigating in the moment. So they know how to show up here, and they also know how they can show up at grandma's house. And they make the switch seamlessly. Nobody has to tell them, oh, you can't do that here. They know how to navigate the varying cultures within their own families, in the same way that they know how to navigate the cultures of the country that we live in, for example. They're raised by a Caribbean mother. There's a culture that they are raised in because there's a culture that their mom was raised in. But when they go to school, it's not that. It's a whole other kettle of fish. And they just switch. They code switch without being taught to do it. And then the point is, you can create a culture. So this connects back to what Fire said earlier about, well, how do I know what to do? Because that is not what I was raised in. So what do I do now? You create your own culture. That's what you do. You can sit with your partner and you decide what the culture in your home is going to look like. What do we want to happen in this house? And you intentionally, purposefully create it over time until it becomes the new normal. Right? And with that being said, I would like to switch gears because I want us to talk about men who did not grow up with a mother. Because we've been very focused on the men who grew up with their mothers and had dysfunctional relationships, which ultimately made them dysfunctional adults. What happens to the men who were not raised by a mother and they do not know what a healthy mother-son relationship feels like because they just never, there are some men who don't even know who their mother is, or they were abandoned by their mother. Or their mothers may be incarcerated. I mean, so many different reasons why some men grew up without a mother. And what is the impact of that? What does that look like? Because then we can't call them mama boys, but they also grew up with some dysfunction. So what terminology are we going to use there, and what might that look like? How do they figure it out?
Wow. I'm trying to come up with something clever to call this group of brothers. I've got nothing right now, but I can tell you two examples. Obviously, it's not my story, but I have brothers. One who was raised by his maternal grandmother because his mom, she was in the streets. I think she had a drug addiction or something to that effect, and she wasn't there. The impact on him. He is like one of the best dads I've ever seen and one of the most protective husbands I've ever seen. And so you would think, given his upbringings and his mommy issues, that he would have a disempowering context or occurrence of women. But in fact, like, he cleaves to his wife and he won't miss a thing with his children. I mean, he is like literally one of the best dads and the best husbands that I know. Now, I do have another homeboy who, similar situation, mama left, running the streets, and grandma raised him, and he has absolutely no respect for women whatsoever. No respect. I mean, the way he carries and conducts himself in these streets is horrific, and I make sure to tell him that every time he feels inclined to share a story with me. So he doesn't share stories with me of his conquest anymore because I don't think it's cute, and I think that he should get help and get therapy. Talk about men holding other men accountable. Talk about conscious masculinity. We have no issues holding our brothers accountable. But I say all that to say, similar circumstances, two different guys. One is dad of the year, husband of the year. The other one has got 4 baby moms and 6 kids. Yeah. And I don't think he's done. So I don't know what to call him, but I think the individual will and how you interpret what happens, what you make it mean about you, what you make it mean about women, will drive who you become as a man. These men are just simply broken. They're just broken in the specific context or subcategory of mom abandoned me or mom left when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. Because, we were all broken and none of us had a mom abandonment issues, but we still had brokenness and things that we had to complete from our childhood. So they're broken like everybody else.
Yep. And I'd like to add to what Fire's saying is that to me, it's not necessarily the having the mother, like your maternal mother actually there, is having that mother figure or that maternal figure in your life. And I would argue that if we investigated the two examples that Fire just gave, the one had a great example of a maternal figure, and the other, grandma might have just been like, "Hey, here's the TV, go to school, come home," type thing. Like, Fire, do you know their situations?
It's funny you say that, bro, because the one who is super dad, super husband, his maternal grandmother was Caucasian, and he's darker than you. I mean, he's, you know, he could pass or qualify more as an African American than you, bro. That's a joke. That's a joke, guys. I'm just
Nobody laughed except for you.
because nobody.
That makes it not a joke, right? Hey, did you see what happened? Did you just see what happened to Chris Rock? Did you see what happened to Chris Rock? Look, Queen is gonna have to bleep things out of this. Like, see, what y'all don't realize is like light skin is not a joke anymore, bro. That's really what Will was trying to say. That's what Will was trying to say. Okay. All right.
Anyway,
well, you know what? Like, let me get out of meltdown mode right quick.
Oh, that's hilarious. We can drop a little levity in here, but his grandmother was a Caucasian, and he's like, you know, Wynn's color, right? And she had issues with racism within like she had problems accepting that she had black grandbabies. So it wasn't she was not accepting of his mother. As a matter of fact, I think she abandoned his mother, who was mixed, right? Obviously, she laid down with the black man, made his mom, and then, you know, his mom made him. So no, he did not get maternal love.
Hold on. We're saying the relationship that they had. What I'm saying is the relationship that he had with the grandmother. That's where I'm going. It wasn't.
Good. No, because again, she was a Caucasian woman, and she had a African American grandchild that she was raising, and she had issues reconciling racism within herself. So she did not treat him with love and kindness, and he was rejected from abandoned from your mom, rejected from your grandmother who raised you because you were brown, and he's still he's not only dad of the year and husband of the year, he's like the top producing seller in his company as well, in the world, number one in the world, year over year, quarter over quarter. I mean, he's an outlier, you would say. You guys would call him an outlier. But it's how he internalized all of that. And
that's what I was gonna say. So then that's what it is it's how people respond, right? So it's not necessarily whether you have that figure in your life or not. It's how you respond to it. Right. Because, you know, my dad's the same way. He doesn't know who his dad was. However, we're like, that's my best friend. I could tell you, like, if the OJ thing happened, I'm riding him to the, you know, they're going to take both of us. Yeah. And so, you know, like, he has been super dad, always there. And he just, so I think that maybe not having that, he wanted to give that. It's a weird thing. And so I think that it's people's interpretations, right? Like, if I had that, am I going to interpret that as, you know, women are less than me? Because there's plenty of people whose moms were in their lives, treated them perfectly, and they treat women horribly. Yeah. Like the guy that you mentioned with the multiple babies, mothers, you know, like lots of children. There's plenty of people who had their mom in their life, and they have that same situation going on. So it's really like how a person interprets that, not necessarily whether they have that in their life or not.
Facts. Because I know certified mama's boys who are certified players and pimps. Like, dude, your mom is how could you have this relationship with your mom of the utmost reverence and respect and not display that towards women in these streets? It's, to your point, it is purely subjective to the will of the individual and how they interpret their circumstances.
I'd like to highlight a comment really quick that the elements can respond to. It says a man not having his mother's love must be one of the most emotionally crippling realities ever. This comment is coming from a male, by the way. It is one thing for a man to not have the validation of a father. It's traumatic, but to not have a mother's love could have debilitating effects to last a lifetime.
Yeah, I think that's right
Thoughts?
on. I think that women provide a tremendous nurturing that every child, regardless whether it's a male child or a female child, needs. I think it's a physical thing. I don't know if you've seen the studies, Queen, but I'm sure you actually have. But there are studies where a child doesn't have, if it doesn't have touch as a baby.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it can
that
die.
it- yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so children need that nurturing, and that mostly comes from the mother. Um, but let me share this: is that my mother was around 33 when she gave birth to me. She had already had two kids, and they were much older than me. And so when I came, she wanted to really live her life. And so even though she loved me and cared for me, I spent the bulk of my time with my godmothers. And when I was a kid, I actually felt abandoned by her. And I never really understood why she wanted to spend time doing other things as opposed to being around me. But as an adult, I got that she wanted to have a life too, and she deserved a life too. But as a kid, I had no idea, you know, um, why that actually occurred. So I say that to share that, like like the person just put in a quote, for a son not to have a mother in his life is tremendously demeaning. I certainly agree with that for sure.
I want to take a moment to validate you, Wind. Your feelings are 100% valid. 100%. I see you, and you have right to those feelings. And so I just want to pause and just acknowledge that that was a big deal, what you just shared with us there. And you're also getting lots of love and light from the comment section. Okay,
Yeah, I appreciate that.
right?
And there's a lot of guys that grew up, you know, just like that, and that's the reason why a lot of guys go to gangs, because there's a lot of love and camaraderie and security with gangs. That's why people run the streets. You know, you didn't know how to characterize it, Fire, but on the streets they say you're raised by wolves, and so you never really have a real heart, and so you can never really have a nurturing and healthy relationship, not only with women, but you don't necessarily have a healthy relationship with people in general, because you haven't learned empathy. You haven't learned love other than the brotherly love, the security love, the street love, having your brother having your back and doing whatever it takes to feed, everybody around you. That's why we're seeing what we're seeing right now. I mean, it's the generation that we're experiencing right now is because of, going back to what Earth said, we've lost our way. we lost tradition, and our family structure is absolutely broken. And to reconcile that, we have to go back to tradition, and we have to, figure out ways and methodologies to effectively communicate that throughout the generations, and bring back the connectedness between the generations, as we're fragmented.
I want to highlight another comment. Can we speak on this one? Nature versus nurture. Nature men or humans are born with inherited traits that can lead them to having an awareness, a desire to unlearn or develop a healthy relationship. Any thoughts on the nature versus nurture argument? I have some thoughts about that myself, but I'd love to hear from you. Do you feel like we are born with some inherited traits from parents, grandparents that might influence our behaviors?
Yeah, absolutely. It's called epigenetics. Yeah, absolutely. And the nurturing piece is who we make ourselves out to be based upon who people tell us we are. Who people train us to be XYZ, and we accept it as being true. That's the nurturing piece. And then we carry out our lives based upon how we're nurtured, instead of our inherent nature, whatever that inherent nature is going to be. And there's always a conflict between nature and nurture. It's always nature versus nurture. And your nature is who you were born into this world as. Your nurturing is who you became over time based upon societal influences, whatever that looked like for you, for the individual. And there's always a conflict that exists. And the moment your nature rises, your nurturing will always come and snuff it out. Always, until you understand that you do have an inherent nature, and you do have nurturing that is not inherent, it's taught.
Mm-hmm.
And then the moment you can allow your nature, who you're born into this world as, to be the thing that is that's dominant in your life, you always have a conflict, and life will always be what it is for you. And I always say life is difficult when you're operating off of your nurturing, and it's very easy when you're operating off your nature. Period. So that's all I'm saying.
I want to say something very controversial.
Drop it.
I agree with Earth to an extent. I love epigenetics. I particularly love epigenetics because it doesn't just focus on inherited traits. It focuses on inherited trauma. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
Trauma can literally be passed on through the genes. Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
And so it behoves us, I think, to find a balance between allowing ourselves to be led by who we truly are, which is nature, versus choosing to let nurture take the front seat. Because sometimes, truth be told, what we are coming into the world with is not healthy. It's not functional. It is not what is going to get you from point A to point B successfully. Truth be told, what we need to be doing sometimes is checking that nature and curbing it, or sometimes even stamping it all the way out, because a lot of it is just trauma being passed on from one generation to the next, unhealed trauma. Sometimes that unhealed trauma is masqueraded as tradition. as culture. That's the way we always do it in this family. That's how all the men in this family are. You know, that kind of thing. And that's our tradition. Sometimes that tradition is a mess. It is a whole hot dysfunctional mess that has existed in this family for maybe hundreds of years because we do not call it what it is. We don't call it trauma. We're referring to it as tradition. We ought to be careful with that. And so I want to say that while I agree that some amazing things can indeed be passed on epigenetically, we have to keep an eye on those epigenetics because we also need to be cycle breakers. We also need to be making sure that we are not passing anything on that really needs to just be cut off. Like when people say it runs in the family, sometimes we need to say, well, this is where it runs out because I'm not passing this on to my children because it's unhealthy. And I know that you all think it's tradition, but it's a sick tradition. We need to stop. This is just not, this isn't it, you know? So that's my controversial contribution to the epigenetics situation.
Cool. So let me say this. I actually merged two things together that I really should not have merged together. Period. Yeah. Because you have a nature, right? And I shouldn't have said epigenetics. But it's popped out of my mouth. So you have a nature, and what you inherit from the behaviors of your family is not nature. It's not natural at all. What you inherit from, for example, that everyone has skills and ways of being in their bloodline, the bloodline that they specifically come from, right? And so those things are your nature, your inherent nature. It's who you are. If you were to go off into the spiritual realm and exist there, you would still carry those things, and they cannot be taken away. They cannot be altered. Nothing can happen to them at all. So you do have those things. Then you have things that we inherit based upon certain behaviors that we would classify as epigenetics. Some of those things are just not healthy at all. Some of them are. So it's sort of, both. Some healthy and some not. And then you have your nurturing that's there. And I actually misspoke, and I actually merged epigenetics and your inherent nature, which is different than epigenetics. Because if I speak about it from a traditional, for example, from a traditional African perspective, let's go there. Then you're born into this world with medicine. And that medicine is whatever it is. Medicine is, we would call it gifts in the West. The medicine is whatever you're born into this world with that is for the benefit of society, the benefit of community. That's your medicine. That's so that will be in line with your nature, right? And then you have the things that are not necessarily inherent. When they're not inherent, that would be like, oh, my I don't know, my father was an alcoholic, my mother used drugs or whatever, and you could actually inherit that. And the same thing with breast cancer works the same way. So you inherit some things that are not good for you at all, and that's not really your nature. Those things are not natural. Those things are add-ons to your existence, so to speak. So yeah, I just wanted to clear that up. So you're actually correct.
Yeah, it's a life is nature and nurture coexisting in a waltz. Some like a duality always occurring. And I think to Serene's point, when I read the point and I listen to the dialogue, what jumps out for me is what constitutes a healthy relationship. So if we're experiencing unhealthiness within our own relationship with ourselves or a relationship with the people around us, the question then becomes, what's the source of that dis-ease or discomfort? And sometimes the source of that dis-ease or discomfort is the inherent nature versus the inherited nature versus something that we were conditioned to believe. And it's just the knowing, it's the awareness and the knowing where it's coming from, I think is the main thing, right? So if I have a default way of being that doesn't work and it shows up in relationships like X, am I fully conscious and aware of where that way of being came from? Whether I got it from my great grandfather, or I learned it from my dad who would come get us on the weekends, right? Or I inherited epidemic. How do you even say it?
Epigenetics.
Yeah. Like if I inherited via epigenetics, it matters only because I need to know where the root cause is for me to solve. Like what are the tools that I have at my disposal to solve that, so that I can have the life ultimately that I want.
Yeah. I want to highlight one final question from the comment section, and we can unpack this last question, and then we are going to wrap it up. I know that Water has another commitment. We do not want to hold you hostage, sir. Yes, I just want to say an early thank you to you in case you got to slip out. We appreciate you. We truly do. We appreciate your time. We know you are all busy. And so I just want to send you lots of gratitude from me and all of the followers and listeners here tonight.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So let's look at this very last question, also coming from one of our kings. And it says, I don't know if this was addressed earlier, but do the men on the panel believe that men are born inherently without the strong ability to nurture? This is a bombastic question.
No, I don't believe that.
No, I don't believe that. Nurturing for men looks different. It just looks how it looks, but it's still nurturing at the end of the day. I wouldn't suggest putting nurturing in a box and make it occur in the same way that occur in a way that women express their nurturing and call that nurturing. Nurturing can take on many different facets, and it looks differently. The way men may nurture and the way women may nurture. For example, the nurturing from men is really teaching children limitations, teaching them how to control themselves. There's a lot of research done on that, and that's one thing men bring to the table that unfortunately most women don't bring to the table. That's why if a father will wrestle with his children, that's nurturing. But in the wrestling with his children, he's teaching them how to restrain themselves because he's restraining himself. He's not slamming them to the ground hard. He's picking them up, easing them down to the ground. And that's actually teaching children how to restrain themselves. That's nurturing within itself. And it's bonding when that happens also. So men and women nurture differently. So men are born with a high level of nurturing abilities.
So then, but just for the sake of helping Kadeem, just in case he was asking it that way, so what if he's asking it the way and traditionally the way that women nurture? Like, what would your answer be to that question?
My answer?
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be women are born with that also.
No. So I think he's saying men are not like, do you think that men are not or born without that?
I don't think men are born without that.
Got it. Fire, you were going to say something?
Yeah, Earth is right. Essentially, nurturing shows up in different ways. I think just because we don't lactate, just because we can't sustain life with our biology, or early life with our biology, and our nurtureship doesn't show up the way you envision a woman nurturing a baby, does not mean that we don't offer nurtureship to young people. To Earth's point, I could be teaching you how to defend yourself. And from the outside looking in, it's like, why would you teach that kid how to use a stick? Why would you teach that kid how to shoot at 13? Why would you teach that kid karate or jujitsu at 7? Like, why would you teach them how to fight and defend it? Well, that, from my perspective, could be absolutely a form of nurturing, because nurturing deals with care for and protection and encouragement. And so how these things get expressed, this is why it's essential to have both sexes or both genders present in the rearing of a child, so they can get a complete 360 infusion of wisdom, talent, gifts, medicine, love, nurturing or nurtureship, as we're talking about right now. So when we say words, I think there's a default for how they occur for us that is universal. But then when we double click or we unpack it, we realize, well, wait a minute, my dad was nurturing when he was roughing me up. He was preparing me to hold my own in these streets. Oh, my dad was love when he taught me to clean my room, and he told me to cook my own dinner. Because when there was no parent present or adult present, I needed to be able to handle the activities or the tasks at hand. And it didn't matter whether my mom gave me the tools or my dad gave me the tools. Thank God both of them were active in my life, even though my dad was non-custodial, so that I was lacking nothing. So look at it from that perspective. What does nurtureship look like through a man's lenses, and what he can give or contribute to a young person, given the circumstances? Because you may not be teaching them how to cook if mom is there. But if you're a single dad, you got to do it all. And you got to learn how to do pigtails and French braids too while you at it. So I just think that we just have to have a broader occurring of what these words mean, and look at them for how each gender shows up and can deliver upon what's needed in the space to the particular young person.
I might be naive about this, but I think that all of us are born decent human beings, right? And I think that our inability to nurture and be kind and things of that sort is a function of our environment. And I think that's what impedes us from having great relationships and being nice and kind, and like I said, it's a function of how we've grown up and who's around us, what are you growing up in the projects, in gang activity or things of that sort. All that stuff has men particularly be a particular way, but they don't have the capacity to actually nurture.
Yeah, I want to I'm going even further south than Wynn went. I hear what Fire and Earth are saying, and to answer the question the way that I kind of heard it is, yeah, I can't really speak to whether men are born that way or not, but I can say that if I'm looking at the question and it's saying that men inherently pretty much don't have the ability to nurture, I would say that, probably I'm not going to call up, I'm not going to rely on any of these three guys if I'm having surgery. They're not going to do it. So I don't know what they were just talking about, but dude, if I'm sick, you guys aren't going to be any help. You're going to be like, oh, he's going to be all right. And I'm going to be over here deathbed, over here praying getting some pastor to pray over me for my last rites or something, because I just don't see men as nurturers. And that ability, I think, is probably not necessarily maybe it's a born thing, but I'm kind of where Wind is that's just not how men are raised. Men are kind of raised of this whole, there's a whole thing when it comes to toxicity or whatever, but men aren't raised in that realm. And so you don't really see that often. However, it does show up in places. And I'll give you an example. So Earth, when did we get back? We just got back
last Sunday. Okay,
a week ago.
Yeah,
literally a week ago. We just returned from a snowboarding trip. Earth and I went on a snowboarding trip. During that trip, Earth took a spill and he basically landed on his side and he pretty much injured his ribs. So he's at the house. You know, we're over there afterwards laughing, and he's kind of like, he laughs, and he's like, you know, he grabs the side. And I'm like, bro, what is wrong with you, dude? He's like, man, I actually landed harder than I thought. So I inherently, I'm like, are you okay? He's like, yeah, I'm good. And so we're talking more. He does the same thing, and literally at some point I'm like, bro, you're not okay. Like you're just playing. You're trying to play it off, but you're pretty jacked up right now. So like what I did is that I got ice out of the freezer, and I brought ace bandages because when you ski and snowboard, you fall sometimes, and so I had that stuff. And I was like, bro, here, let's put some on your ribs. I'm like, lift your shirt up. He's like, no, I'm good. I'm like, bro, lift it up. So our other buddy was there. He had to hold it. We wrap him up or whatever. And then afterwards, he felt better. But to me, when I hear the word nurture, I think that kind of stuff. And I can say that like that came from a genuine concern. Like, yo, bro, like, are you all right? You're not all right. All right, we're gonna have to get back out there tomorrow. This is gonna help you. Here, do this. Even though he was resistant, I'm like, no, shut up, and you're gonna do this or whatever. So to me, you know, like that's an example of nurturing that I would kind of, I could see my lady being like, hey, you need to ice that, or here, let me wrap that up for you or whatever. But, you know, we were in a pinch and we were like, yo, man, we got to get out there tomorrow, bro. You're going to have to like, you know, so we almost had to hold him down and get him a bite on something. Cause he like, when we put the ice on, he's like, we're like, bro, it's all right. It's all right. You know,
Fire, don't say anything. Keep your mic muted.
Yeah.
I
want to say something real quick. You hit the nail on the head, Water. It's a genuine concern. Like that's how it occurred to you. But we have to ask women, how does it occur to them when they're nurturing? Does it also occur as a genuine concern? And concern may not be the word, but it's something that's genuine about it that has them to take an action, whatever that action is around how nurturing is expressed for them. There has to be something that like a catalyst that promotes the nurturing. So it could be like for you, it's a genuine concern that promoted, you know, how that nurturing showed up there. But we have to ask women, how does it show up for you? Is it first like, oh, this concern, or is it like this empathy, or is it like, you know, whatever it is that actually promotes the expression of the nurturing?
Yeah, because I think that there's something that prompts that. And in my case, it was like, dude, we're laughing at jokes and you need to be in the hospital or something. So you know, like I think that for who like when the question was asked, I think it was coming somewhere from that perspective or whatever. So that's why I was saying that, you know, the way that Fire and Earth kind of described it earlier, it seemed to me, you know, guys, I don't know if we're not born with that or we just don't have it. Or like Wynn said, we're just not raised in that way. I would gander that it's more so we're not raised in that way. But I would like to see what the research shows, because that's a really good question. Fire, you had something. Fire had something to say. I want to hear that.
His mic, because I can see on his face.
Queen, trust me, Queen. Like, there's no shots that can be fired between the elements that we're like. Trust me, we all know, you know, who to shoot shots at and who not to, and Fire knows to shoot shots at Wynn, because Wynn he's got the target on his hat.
I would like to just say very quickly that I think you all make solid points with regards to that. I agree with Earth that it's important to kind of reframe. Well, Fire also made this point. It's important to kind of reframe what our definition of nurture is. I think that, and Fire said this, that when we speak a word, we have already attached a context to it. We've turned it into a whole construct of just how we conceptualize the word and what it's supposed to represent and the images and everything that come up for us. I think that is stuff that can be reframed. We have that in our heads because it's It's what's ingrained into our psyche based on the way we're raised, which is the point Wind made. And so it all ties in. The way you were raised is what contributes to the construct that nurture becomes for you when you speak the word. And so all of that is true, and you can reframe that and make it a construct that looks the way you think it should. Nurture doesn't have to look just this way, it can look all these ways. There's that. And I also agree with the point that Water made when he said that nurture comes naturally from a woman, but I would like to extend that and say it comes naturally from a woman in particular ways, because it also comes naturally from a man in particular ways. The physical nurture, meaning the care of an infant, the gentler aspects of nurture come very naturally from a woman, and it's because we were created that way. We bring life into the world and we are equipped. It's actually our hormones that make us like that. Your brain literally produces hormones that give you a certain nature. You show up in your relationships with other humans in that way because that's just how you're kind of made. That's how you're put together. And so naturally, certain types of nurture comes from a woman. But there are also some types of nurture that come very naturally from a man too, because men were also equipped to bring that type of nurture. There are whole books that have been written about rough play, for example. Earth mentioned that. Fathers engage in rough play with their children. Mothers tend not to do that. But do you know that rough play is actually critical to human development? It's a thing. Like I said, people have written whole books about rough play and the influence it has on healthy human development in children. It's a whole concept, rough play. So, and women don't do that. As a matter of fact, we cringe when we see our men do this, but it's important. It doesn't come naturally from us, but there are also things that don't come naturally from them. And it's a balance. We were created that way to complement each other that way. That's how it's supposed to work, I think. So I agree with all of you where that is concerned.
May I insert one thing?
Yes.
I would also say, and I'm gonna give an example in a second, that we all rise to the occasion. So it's circumstantial as well. And I'm gonna give you a clear example of why I'll say that. Last year, my mother was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And as opposed to having her be in hospice, I brought her over to my house to take care of her. Before that, I had no idea that I would do something like that and take very good care of her like that. I wanted to make sure that she was well loved and taken care of in her last days. And I rose to the occasion to do just that. And I had no idea that that was actually in me to do that. Just like a woman, when her baby is in jeopardy, she becomes as strong as any man on earth and moves mountains to protect that baby and get that baby out of jeopardy. So I just wanted to insert that it's also circumstantial.
Agree with you 100%. And Wind, we gonna talk when this thing is over, because you're hitting me hard tonight, man.
I like the way you said that. We're gonna talk when this is over. I love that.
Yeah, no, we gotta talk, Wind. Yeah, let's wrap this up. Let's wrap this up. I noticed Water is still here. Did y'all notice that Water didn't leave?
It was too juicy for him to leave.
Right? Must be
water,
nice in here.
Water, the king of pre-hype. I'm quitting. I'm never coming back. I'm leaving. I got a hard stop.
Well, no, she said that she was going to wrap it up, and so like here we are, 20 minutes later, and I'm like, oh, okay. So hopefully we're about to really wrap it up this time. That's what I'm hoping. So this is y'all want to kind of like joke. I'm like, like I thought you said you wrapping it up.
All right. I'm wrapping it up. This is the last comment I'm going to read. Serene, and that's the work we do as psychotherapists. You are right, Queen. That is what we do. We help people see where there were moments of nurturing from their caregivers. This can be so helpful in the work of healing, increasing self-worth, and self-actualizing. Right? And I think that's a great point on which to end. I want to just shower these kings with appreciation tonight. This is a busy group. I mean, these are movers and shakers in our community. Let me put it that way. And so I am truly, truly, truly grateful that you carved out this time to come to the Always a Queen platform. I do not take it for granted. I really appreciate when people give me their time, especially when they're busy. I think we do not thank people for their time enough. Like, time is the best gift anybody can give. It's a piece of your life you'll never get back. And so I appreciate you all so very, very much. And if there is anybody watching this live, if you're watching it live right now, or if you're watching this broadcast from the recording on the Always a Queen platform, and you have not yet followed 4 Elements United on all of their social media platforms, I truly do not understand why you have not done this yet. You need to pause this video and go and follow them. Follow them on Twitter, follow them on Facebook, follow them on YouTube. Find out wherever else they are and just follow them, because especially if you're a man, you need to follow and support the work that these men are doing. They are pushing our community forward. That's what we are about, and we should be supporting this work in any way that we can. All right. And it's a wrap. That's it. Thank you, Kings. I'm sending love and light to you all. And that's it. Love and light to all the people who are watching and listening, whether you're here now or you're going to be watching me sometime down the road. Thank you so much. I will see you next week, Sunday, at the same time for another broadcast. And in the meantime, be a beautiful week. Bye, everyone.
Peace.
Have a good evening.